In this video, I really want to talk about preparing now for summertime bass fishing. And I know that this might sound a little bit extreme to some of you anglers, because if you're like me or if you live up in the northern part of the country, a lot of our fish are still in the pre-spawn phase. They haven't even made it up to their beds. But if you live down south or in certain fisheries across the US, a lot of fish have probably already spawned, and a lot of them are starting to make their way out to some of these summertime locations. And if there's anything that I have kind of figured out over the years, is that the first fish that make it out to those summertime locations are the ones that you want to catch. They are very active, and it can be some of the best fishing you will experience all year long. So in this video, we're going to talk about that. Now, before we get into it, this video is brought to you by Gills TV. This is the recent website and app that I developed that is solely dedicated to helping anglers learn how to find fish. And you will actually be able to watch some of the best anglers in the world as they break down different bodies of water. So if you guys want to check that out, I'm going to leave some links down below in the description. Also, anyone who becomes an annual member at Gills TV will get a $50 gift card to Fin Fishing. So you can pick up a USA made sun shirt, hat, whatever it may be. All right, let's talk a little bit about summertime bass fishing, early summertime bass fishing. Now, like I said in the intro, this first wave that pushes out can be the most active wave of bass that you will catch all year long. And the reason being, a lot of these fish, as soon as they get off the bed, you know, females, even males, a lot of them haven't eaten. And, you know, for in a female's case, maybe a few days, maybe a week. In the male's case, it may be a couple of weeks. So these fish are very active when they first start getting out to these summertime areas. And so it's important for us anglers to start kind of just going out and checking some of these summertime places from time to time. Even if you have a lot of fish that are up on beds, these fish always are going to spawn in different waves. And if you can catch that first wave of fish that are moving out to some of these summertime areas, not only can you experience a lot of the best bass fishing you will experience, but you can find areas that fish are going to be constantly feeding into, which means that you might find a spot that for the next month is going to be a good area to fish, because fish are constantly spawning, they're constantly moving out, and you're already ahead of the game. You're not catching the tail end of this, you're actually in front of it. And so I've experienced this a number of different times over the years. And like I said, the fish that first get out there are very active. So you can catch them a lot of times on some very aggressive baits. Baits like deep diving crankbaits, maybe heavier swim baits that you can get down there really deep, bigger jigs, bigger flutter spoons. You can catch them in a very active way, which allows you to be able to cover a lot of water. And so, you know, I remember a number of years ago fishing a Bassmaster Open on Lake Chickamauga. This is more of a southern impoundment. And I was able to get ahead of the fish in this particular tournament. And every single day that I found this little grass edge that was kind of like leading out of a spawning pocket towards the main lake, and this little grass edge, man, the fish were constantly feeding out of this spawning area, going right to that grass edge. And I'm telling you, it got better and better and better every single day that I was there. And it was like an absolute ball. Like, it was some of the most fun fishing that I've ever experienced, because you were constantly just catching fish. I was on this huge wave. Now, sometimes you're catching a lot of fish. Sometimes what you also find is you may not be catching a lot, but the quality is what you are catching. I know, you know, what I just talked about at Lake Chickamauga was a time where I was on top of it. There's been a lot of times where I got my butt kicked. I remember fishing on Lake Champlain a number of years ago when I was not thinking about summertime and post-spawn fishing enough. I was trying to find some fish that were still on beds. And I remember an angler that I was fishing with who became an Elite Series angler. His name's Garrett Paquette. He was fishing out in like 45 foot of water for these fish that had already spawned and had started to make their wave out. And he wasn't catching an absolute ton of fish, but it seemed like every single fish that he pulled the trigger on was a 4.5 pound smallmouth, which is a big fish for that particular body of water. So again, sometimes you get on it, sometimes you don't. But the thing that I found is that that first wave that makes it out there is very aggressive and you want to catch them. Now, the other reason that you want to start preparing now for summertime bass fishing is that sometimes throughout the year, as the weather gets a lot warmer, in some of these lakes that have a lot of grass in them, the grass is only going to start to kind of cover up a lot of things that you can see. So if you're using your electronics a little bit earlier, even if you are in the pre-spawn of the year and your fish are not even close to making their way out, sometimes now is one of the best times to start graphing around and looking for rock that might get somewhat covered up by grass later in the year as that grass really starts to rise up. And so preparing now, going out, scanning around some more deep, maybe points and humps and finding that rock. The thing about it is that later in the year when that grass gets really tall, if you still know where the rock mixes in with that grass, those become prime spots that the bass will live all summer long. Like these little spots where there's a rock pile within the grass are spots that you can constantly go up to and catch fish. And it's not only rocks, sometimes it's other structures like, or cut pieces of cover like stumps. Maybe you'll find a stump that later it will get completely covered with grass. Guys who look later will never find this stuff because it's completely covered in grass. But these little tiny areas are like bass magnets. And so really, if you kind of go out now and find these spots, it will help you maybe a month down the road. And so the last thing that I wanted to say and why you should prepare now for summertime bass fishing is that you guys have all probably experienced this. There's certain lures that get really hot during certain seasons. And so sometimes buying those in advance can really, again, help you to be ahead of the game. Because, you know, all it takes sometimes is a really good YouTube video or a Bassmaster Elite Series event to get one on a particular bait, and you can't find that bait anywhere for like 2 months. So maybe a deep diving crankbait of some sort wins a big tournament, and all of a sudden you want that bait, and it's gone. You won't have it for 2 months, 3 months, where basically the summertime fishing is over and you finally get your hands on it, and now you can't even use it until next year. And so if you kind of think about some ways that you might want to catch them in those summertime places earlier, you can kind of take advantage of being able to buy those baits early and then use them kind of in that prime season. So guys, I know that it might sound crazy for some of you, but I really think that right now is a great time to start preparing for summertime bass fishing. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed that video. Also, don't forget to check out Gills TV and Fin Fishing if you want to help support this channel. All right, see you.